April the 10th, 2021, and welcome to the UFC Live for Lock show right here on Awesemo.com. As always, I am joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. to break down this morning / afternoon fight card, depending on where you're at. Hey, if you're on the West Coast, it's really an early start time. 8:30 local start time in Las Vegas for our very first fight. Pete, let me just start out there. Would you like that as a fighter to fight at 8:30 in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, 8:30, probably not, but like around noon would be awesome, or 11, because like that's traditionally where you're training a lot, a lot of morning practices. So I think that would be fine. It's better than fighting at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning when you're like, after the main event or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of because sometimes you see this in depending on where the UFC at, you get those early start times. But of course, since we did the show on Thursday, we did have a slight change to the fight card. Of course, this goes into roster construction. We lost the female matchup, Norma Dumont, missing weight by 3.5 pounds. Sounds like Blanchfield, she was ready to take the fight. She was like, let's go. However, the commission said no, which, Pete, you know this, that's a doctor call more than anything else, where a doctor say, you know what, we're not going to clear this fighter to compete.
Yeah, and I believe that's Dumont's second time missing weight. So I'm interested to see what she's going to do going forward, whether she bumps up or whether the UFC really punishes her for missing weight twice. I mean, you can't do that at the UFC level.
Yeah, no, that is, you kind of wonder if maybe she even gets another fight that potentially the UFC says, hey, go show us you can make weight in the regional scene and you can go there. Well, we talk roster construction here, Pete. I was developing some lineups here earlier. And when we talk about GPP versus cash, my general thought on cash lineups is simply Marvin Vettori is a core play for me. Not necessarily in GPP, and that's just because of his salary, particularly on DraftKings. 9,600, man, you're going to have to, when you take him, you're looking down at that low end. So what's your general thought today about construction, whether we're talking GPP or cash?
Well, I will tell you that I feel like it's a tricky week. Yeah, we have 14 fights, Jason, but we have a lot of priced up options, and there's some pretty high 9,000 options. And it's like, man, if you roster one or maybe two of those guys, then it makes roster construction difficult, especially if you look at fight tape and you're like, man, do I really have to roster these low 7K guys that have, a path to victory because they're in, disadvantageous matchups. So I will say that, for me, finding someone in the mid-range to kind of make your roster construction easier is kind of like my start. A guy that keeps falling in my lineups is William Knight. And I know it's not an easy matchup, and he's at a big size disadvantage in the matchup as far as height and stature, but the guy's a freak. And if he can get down Jung, you're talking about a guy who's under 8,000, has tons of grappling potential, has tons of ground and pound, top control time. That low 8K, high 7K range is what I think is going to really make or break your lineups today.
Yeah, I did find myself, I was doing some office hours in our premium Slack a little earlier. And one of the things that, someone had asked me, said, what underdog are you going to be over the field on? And to me, it is William Knight. Yeah. I think that if William can make this not a fight at range, can cut in close, maybe use what I believe is going to be a size advantage in terms of strength, that is someone that I definitely think I will potentially be over the field on in terms of this one. I mean, look, and I said it, when it comes to Martin Vettori, I'll be under the field in GPPs, but cash, he is just an absolute core play for me in this one. Of course, so we appreciate everyone that's in here on a Saturday morning. Of course, if you are not subscribed to Awesemo, you got to hit that subscribe button, because we have got a ton of programming each and every day here. Of course, we got loaded up content all day long. Following us we got MLB live for lock at noon Eastern time. And then, of course, I'll be back at 1 p.m. for NASCAR Strategy Show. Also got NBA shows later on today. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. That's so you know when a show is live here on the channel. Hit that notification bell. And, you always want to come up in that subscription feed, so you know when shows have been on the channel. So be sure to subscribe to Awesemo if you have not done that to this point. Looking at some value plays, we kind of talked about William Knight a little bit. When I was doing crunches in terms of value plays for me, Mike Perry was coming up a lot, and there has been significant line movement on this fight. 24 hours ago, Mike Perry was plus 135. He's now plus 115. So a lot of people, Perry did look good on scale. Been training at MMA Masters down there in South Florida. But I do think on the FanDuel side of things, I think that's a fight that you got to have some emphasis on.
Yeah. I'm interested in that bout, and I feel like a lot of people might be jumping off the Mike Perry bandwagon because he's let us down so many times, and you don't know how serious he's going to take fights and whether he's going to put his all into a training camp or his girlfriend's going to corner him or whatever disaster Mike Perry's going to be, involved with. But I will say, in regards to the matchup, that Mike Perry has performed well and in some tougher fights and hasn't been finished in some fights as well. Like, I think about the fact that, Mike Perry fought Santiago Ponzinibbio, and how he went the distance with them. Max Griffin, he has a win over Paul Felder. Like, those are some legitimate competition, and yeah, he's lost some of them, but he's gone the distance. I do think that Daniel Rodriguez is a tough matchup for him because he's a southpaw, has good volume, has a submission game. So Mike Perry has to be on his P's and Q's, but it's definitely a spot where, if I'm looking at the slate, since it's not really too many appealing fighters under like 7,700, I think you can sprinkle Mike Perry in and hope that he really puts it all together in the octagon. Does have power. We have seen Daniel Rodriguez get hit with some big shots. He's a guy that I think is going to be pretty popular in the low end. And I think, like, for me, I have like a group of long shot plays that I think I'm sprinkling here and there. I think Sasha Palatnikov is going to be a very popular play because of his price, 6,700. You told me, you mentioned how, Impa Kasanga and I didn't really look too strong on the scale. We have seen Sasha Palatnikov face some adversity in the cage against his fight against Luis Kosei. And, he overcome that adversity, was able to stick it out, has good volume. Now he's fighting a guy who's coming off a knockout loss and just cut a tremendous amount of weight. So if you're a player that likes to fade fighters coming off of knockout losses, then maybe Sasha Palatnikov at 6,700 is your guy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, because that's where I was going to go next. He is a play that I was getting to on both slates. Impa, I mean, look, I think if you're going to potentially gain leverage and you want to take a chance, Impa could be a guy where you can gain some leverage on the field. Of course, ownership projections are free over awesemo.com. That is a great tool that we have over there to help you develop your lineups for tonight. Obviously, Marvin Vettori is the most popular. I did find myself getting to a little bit of Kevin Holland as well, just because, when you're playing multiple lineups, you want to sprinkle in that underdog in the main event as well. That is somebody, look, I like Vettori to win that spot. I think it's a great position for him. But I think if you're playing multiple lineups, you got to have some Marvin Vettori. But if you're going single bullet, I think it's got to be all about Marvin Vettori in that main event. Now, talking about those 9K options over on DraftKings, and one of the questions I got earlier today was basically about, outside of Vettori in cash, who do you like? And I don't think I love. I know you mentioned on Thursday about you really like Joe Selecki in the spot against Jim Miller. You look at the other 9,000 options. Julian Marquez, I think, is a potential ownership leverage play here. We're talking 20% ownership over on DraftKings. The concern I have is Sam Alvey. He does tend to be in fights that don't have volume. So my concern is what happens if Julian Marquez can't get a finish in this fight. That maybe he doesn't cash off at that price point. I mentioned about Joe Selecki. You got Jordan Castro, which, he's kind of on that, borderline of a do not trust list, but you got to fight. He's taking on an opponent, hasn't fought in a couple of years. And even when he did fight, he would be someone I would consider a low level UFC heavyweight. And then you got Impa at 9,500. I would say outside of Vettori. Oh, and Gamrot's the other one I didn't mention at 9,200. I would say Castro, I think you got to sprinkle in his heavyweight MMA, but I don't love a lot of the 9K options this week.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there weren't so many high-end options. I think that Martin Vettori at 9,600, it's warranted. It's a 5-round fight. He has good volume, a decent volume, but good wrestling that can make the difference in a 5-round bout against Kevin Holland, who definitely is not, he doesn't have the best takedown defense. Definitely have to have your exposure there. I think my least favorite option in the 9K range would have to be Impa Kasanganay, just because I think he's priced up to a ridiculous price. I do expect him to come out victorious in saying that. I do think he's technical. He's training at Sanford MMA. It's just, how does that weight cut affect him here? 9,500, he really has to do a lot and put away Sasha Platnikov early, or completely get a couple 10-8 rounds in there to really pay off at 9,500. Yorgan Castro, 9,400. Is a fighter that I think we have to have exposure to, because he's fighting a guy who's been away from the cage for 5 years. Don't know what he's doing. We don't know if he's, if Georges Daniel is going to come in, a better fighter, a more improved fighter. Is 37 years old. I really like Yorgan Castro against most heavyweights because of his style. He's pretty athletic, throws and bombs away, and throws some crazy leg kicks, which I think can really zap, the energy out of heavyweights and make, a lot of heavyweights quit. So 9,400, I wish he was a little cheaper, but I do think that he's one of the best 9K options. I'll say that Mateus Gamrot has tons of takedown potential and could work towards taking down, Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman. But Holtzman's not an easy fight, right? Like, let's be real. Holtzman's not an easy fight and presents some good value. I see that going the distance, and then you're really banking on him succeeding a lot of takedowns and control time. I don't think he's going to put away Scott Holtzman, even though Holtzman's coming off a knockout loss. Joe Selecki, for me, is easily my favorite 9K options. And as far as Julian Marquez, I'm not really the biggest fan, because Sam Alvey is always in weird fights. Like, the guy will have draws or split decisions and, have minimal output and really just kind of force a slow-paced fight. And Marquez not really having a full camp. It's a leverage play. It's an ownership play, like you said. And I think you should have some exposure there. He's, the cheapest out of the 9K options, but for me, it's not a priority.
This is a thing I think you have to note about that matchup with Sam Alvey and Julian Marquez. Initially, Sam Alvey was going to take on Zach Cummings, training partner of Julian Marquez. Also, I think you have to note this is the first time Sam Alvey has fought at middleweight since 2017. And I know he noted that it was going to be a tough weight cut. So I think that's got to be part of, just kind of our thoughts in terms of that fight. But I think if you're looking for an ownership leverage play, potentially, Julian Marquez, someone, but I do like what you said there about Gamrot, potentially with the takedowns, someone to pay attention to. Now, over on the FanDuel side of the equation, best $20 options on FanDuel. Look, I like getting Martin Vettori, particularly in cash. He's going to be, the most popular play that what we're expecting at the MVP. As you look at those $20 options and up, so we got Impa at $22, Yorgan at $21, Gamrot at $20, Selecki at $20, and Vettori at $23. So I got, based on what we've heard you say so far, Selecki would be right behind Vettori, but then how's it kind of rank after that?
On FanDuel, I'd probably get different, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I'd really hammer into many other, 20 options. I think that if you get one, maybe two, it makes tons of sense. I do find FanDuel to be a little bit tricky with pricing because then you're really dumpster diving in certain areas. And, I think that a guy like Selecki who has some advantages, he's, the younger guy, he can put Jim Miller in some bad spots. I think that he would be my favorite over there. Outside of that, you want to target guys that are going to be defending takedowns. And I can't really point my finger towards somebody. Maybe Georges Daniel is going to look to take down Yorgan and Castro. I mean, that's a total guess. I mean, we don't know how that's going to happen because we just don't know what to expect. But I do think that Yorgan and Castro is still a strong play over there.
Looking at the betting lines in terms of this one, two prop bets that really stuck out to me. One was William Knight via submission plus 2150. The other, Ignacio via TKO KO plus 250. Now, we look at some of the biggest line movements, and I mentioned about the line movement on Mike Perry over the last 24 hours. And by the way, if you want to check out that lines, go over to oddshopper.awesemo.com to check out the odds for these fights. Looking at some of the biggest line movements we've seen since they opened up, Sadiq Youssef gone from minus 195 to minus 130. One book had opened Mackenzie Dern up at minus 300. She's, of course, now plus 120. Hunter Azure opened up minus 120. He's now plus 165. And Saldana opened up minus 170. He is now at minus 135. That William Knight via submission prop is really, man, that's a prop I think you got to look at.
Yeah, I think that's some pretty high money that you can make on that. Some large plus numbers right there. I do think that he's a strong underdog, and he's going to need to take down Da Un Jung. And when he takes down his opponents, he does look for lots of key locks. Low success rate against, guys within the light heavyweight division. But I will say that, Da Un Jung's ground game, when he is on the mat, like regionally, I think he could get overpowered in situations like that. So it's okay to sprinkle that nice prop bet. I think it's possible.
Before we get into your listener questions, do want to let you know about the promo we got going on over at Awesemo.com. Of course, the Masters is underway, and you can still grab a free month of Awesemo Plus Golf, which will cover the PGA Championship, which is next month. So grab 2 months of Awesemo Plus Golf for the price of one by using the promo code Dustin. It's 60 days of Awesemo Plus Golf for $29.95. And if golf isn't your thing, that's all good. You can grab an Awesemo Plus Platinum Weekly Pass, which covers all DFS sports for the same price, $29.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Of course, you can go to awesemo.com/promos to find those deals that we have going on. Want to mention a question we got over in Slack directed right at you, Pete. What's the Malarkey Silva GOAT play this week?
Yeah, I've been pretty good with picking an underdog that a lot of people overlooking. This week's tough, man. Like, this week is tough because I'm looking at the underdogs, and there are several that I just have absolutely no interest in. William Knight might be that guy, and that's kind of like a cop out because he's like almost 8K, but I do think that he could. That matchup's going to be very pivotal for the slate. I feel like, if Da Un Jung wins, he's going to knock him out. And if William Knight wins, it's going to be through tons of takedowns and top pressure. So it's a cop out, but I guess I'll say William Knight.
Yeah, that's someone that I'm definitely looking forward to. Of course, you can hit your questions up in our premium Slack account. Also, you can do that over here in YouTube as well. Of course, appreciate everyone that's in here on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, excuse me. Big Joe Cleveland, Jung falls on Knight for 15 minutes of control time. I don't see Da Un Jung looking to make this a grappling type fight.
No, and if he's on the mat, like, it's probably because, William Knight's trying his hardest to take him down. But I feel like Da Un Jung, needs to keep it on the feet, needs to defend takedowns, and do everything he can to avoid the clinch. But in William Knight's, to his point, in William Knight's fights, at sometimes he does allow himself to get put in some bad positions. You think about some of the adversity he's had to overcome, and he's on his back, and, maybe he's like patching these holes and he's fixing them, and he's going to come out with a strong performance. We'll have to see.
By the way, I'll answer this question because I know the answer to this question.
Let's hear it.
Yes, that was Pete's dad as a judge last night at Bellator. I will tell you. Oh, so every time now, full disclosure, your boy over here passed out as the main card started, but I watched all the prelims. And every time that I hear your dad's name get called for a score, my first thought is, all right, let me see if I disagree with Pete Sr. here.
Yeah, it's always cool when you know a judge or a a referee, and you get to watch an event. And yeah, I mean, a lot of my students and we have a lot of people involved in MMA, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw you getting a little work in with the heavy ball there the other day. Like, first off, can we not put Pete Senior on the ground and you throw the ball to him?
Yeah, no. It's training with Pops is always fun, man. It really is. It's he's taking me to where I'm at today, and it's pretty cool.
Matthew wanted to know our feelings about Sasha Plotnikov. We talked a little bit about him. My only concern, with Impa is A, the salary, and B, how he looked at the weigh-ins yesterday, now down at 170, coming off a knockout loss. Now you're dropping 15 pounds in weight. It's kind of one of those things with Impa that I kind of want to see how he performs this weight class before I kind of jump all in on me. Look, I think he's an incredibly talented fighter. I think going down to Sanford MMA is a great move for him. But it's just one of those things I kind of want to see what he can do before, I'm really kind of, going all in on him.
Yeah, especially at his price tag, right? It's not like we're getting him at a significant discount, and I don't blame you for being a little cautious. If he was like in the 8K range, then I think that we could overlook some of those factors. I'm not saying avoid Impa Kasanganay, because I do think that he's a very talented fighter and can take advantage of Sasha Plotnikov's technical deficiencies. I should say, like, he's a very technical striker, but like defensively, he does get hit a little bit, and he has been knocked out several times and wobbled in the past. So I'd probably be like even to the field on Impa Kasanganay, but I want to go overboard because of his price.
Joe, I appreciate you in the super chat. He says, do you guys have a sleeper pick on the card? Mine is Impa. Rumble Johnson came out and said Impa could be joining the TKO KO club today. I will tell you this. One of the things I've heard about Sanford MMA is those boys go hard down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they used to do it worse, like, when it was the Black Zillions, and they used to really like every day.
The stories you would hear that come out of that camp were insane.
Every day is a fight. And, I've been a part of camps like that where it's like, okay, well, you got to wake up for sparring and sparring's really just fights. So you fight, what are we going to say? 10 times at least hard before you actually have your fight. So when the fight's there, you feel fine and comfortable, but long-term is not really the best approach.
Yeah, I mean, there's times, and this, you've heard stories where one fighter will say, you know what, I'm not sparring with that dude anymore. He's acting like we're going to fight. And I'm not going to try to ruin a potential payday that I have coming up here. Favorite MVPs on FanDuel. So I was kind of going through this a little earlier, and what I was looking at in terms of that was more of, okay, Vettori's going to be the popular play that everyone's going to look to go to. And then, so I was looking at our ownership projections, which are free over today over at Awesemo.com, so you can check that out. And, so I saw Joe Selecki was the number 2 in terms of ownership at MVP. And kind of let me pull it up here on my secondary screen here. And then it was Jordan DeCastro. And then Jack Shore was number 4 in this list. And I thought, and at 6% ownership, I think that potentially is a sneaky FanDuel MVP option.
Yeah, very sneaky. Now, I will say that Jack Shore is going up against Hunter Azure, who's supposed to have, phenomenal wrestling. We just haven't really seen it so much. And he's been more dependent on his striking, training, with Eddie Cha a lot. So I will say that he has a good camp behind him. But, I want to see him initiate some takedowns. I want to see him defend some of Shore's takedowns, because what Shore's going to do. Shore's going to come right at him and try to get in his face and take him down and implement some strong grappling. So I think that Jack Shore is a nice mid-range play, but it's not the easiest matchup. And if you look at his strength of schedule in the UFC so far, I do feel like Hunter Azure is probably the best fighter he's faced in the UFC.
Now, look, this is not a MVP play over on FanDuel. This fighter's got under 20% ownership, but on the FanDuel, with takedown defenses, I wonder if this fighter is a good play. Nina Nunez, aka Nina Ansaroff. The reason I say that is I believe the stat is Mackenzie Dern is 1 for 18 in takedown attempts in the UFC. Obviously, if you're Nina, you want to keep this fight on the feet. You don't want to get into a jiu-jitsu matchup with Mackenzie Dern, because you know how likely that is going to end up. I just wonder, could she be a sneaky play ultimately on FanDuel in that fight? I think in a GPP, I prefer Dern just because I think if there is a finish in that fight, it's coming from the Dern side of the equation.
Yeah, I feel like Nina Nunez is in a good FanDuel spot because she's going to have to defend some takedowns, like you said. And for me, it's a FanDuel play. On DraftKings, I'm not prioritizing that fight. I don't really know if the fight's going to be all that exciting for a GPP. I feel like, they're going to negate each other sometimes. I think Nina Nunez is going to be prepared, right? Like, she's from American Top Team. Her wife is Amanda Nunes. She's surrounded by black belts all over. So I feel like she's going to have some answers from Mackenzie Dern's ground game. I just don't know if it really ends up on the ground that often. So if she's able to defend takedowns, she's a strong FanDuel play. If this does stay on the feet, then then we're maybe looking at like a low score where neither one of them really matter.
Nick mentions that hot sauce at 7K is juicy.
Yeah, I think that Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman is one of the guys like in that 7K range that I'm definitely considering. And, my mouse died on me for a little bit. So I've been over here I've been trying to figure out how to get my trackpad back up here. I'm texting the wife and I'm just like, can you get me a charger over here? I'm trying to plug this in and answer your questions. I can't see anything. But anyways, we're good right now. So now I can actually look at the fights again. I will say that Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman, right? He's a good fighter, very talented, but he's usually the stronger wrestler in his matchups, right? Now, I feel like he's going to, meet his match in the wrestling department. And, Mateus Gamrot's a very, very talented grappler. American Top Team really talk highly about him. But Gamrot did lose his UFC debut. Let's be real. Like, it was a close fight, and I don't really know if you want to view it as a loss. So, Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman is definitely a 7K option that I'm looking at, and he's a part of my 7K range. That's pretty good.
I don't know if you've seen our guy EMAC checking in. Wants you to blink twice. Make sure you're okay.
Yeah, I'm blinking. All right. Yeah, man, it's I'm good.
Oh man, that's too funny. Too funny. We got to get that room set up for you, bro.
I'm trying, man. I have everything to get the room set up. It's just like schedule wise. And
like what are you trying to train or something?
Yeah, I'm trying to train. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. But soon enough, I won't be in the cell right here.
It's like you're trying to get ready for a fight here in the next couple months.
Been trying, man. Been trying. But yes, EMAC, I'm good, brother.
Nick says, Dano, so easy to play, just two fat guys swinging, banging, throw out their salary. I don't agree with that. I just, it's one of those things of, I sit there and say, okay, obviously there's a reason to have concerns about Jung Castro, but there's even more concerns about when you're talking about a guy who hasn't fought in a couple of years. And when you look at the level of competition he's fought, I don't know how I think it's because you're falling in love with the salary, not the fighter.
Yeah. I mean, when his absence outweighs his entire MMA career, then we really have to look at, like, what are we trusting here? We're just trusting the unknown factor, right? The unknown factor that he's going to come in here and perform well because he's had a good salary. But guess what? Like, salaries at the end of the day, they matter for DFS, but in reality, just like odds, don't matter stylistically for the matchups. And Jorgen De Castro, yeah, you want to call him a low-level fighter for the division? Okay, at this moment, I agree with that. But he does possess some skills that a lot of heavyweights don't have. Strong leg kicks. Everybody has power. So I get what he's saying. Dano could obviously just, outlast Jorgen De Castro if this becomes a sloppy fight and maybe land a lucky shot. Absolutely. But it's Jorgen De Castro for me.
Best fighter to win on DraftKings under 7.6K. So we're looking at Sam Alvey, Kevin Holland, Mike Perry, Jim Miller, Scott Holtzman, John McDessie, Yarnis Donho, Hunter Azure, Jordan Griffin, and Sasha Patolkov. Oh,
Man, that's a tough one, huh?
I might go. I mean, it's right at 7.6. Jordan Griffin might be the one I'd pick.
Jordan Griffin's another guy, right, where he's fighting a fighter with a good record, tons of finishes, lots of early finishes as well. Jordan Griffin's really lost, some of my trust, and he does have the UFC experience and probably the stronger strength of schedule. So he's a guy that I'm having exposure to. I think there's 6-7K options that I'm really like. I made a group and I think that's the way to do it this week. Outside of that, there are, few 7K options that I just don't want anything to do with.
FanDuel GPP question from Ryan. Sasha and Perry. And of course it just went away from me. Sasha and Perry in the same lineup, too risky. I would say if that's a single bullet, yes. If you're doing multiple lineups, no.
Yeah, it all depends on like your type of play. Like if you're okay with min cashing, that's all right. If you're trying to take down the tournament, then you're going to need to leave a lot of salary on the table. Now, on a week like this where we have 13 fights, I don't know if you need to really leave so much salary on the table. It's always good to get different, and obviously the more salary you leave on the table, the more variance and the more you're going to shoot up the ladder. But a lot when say we had the 14 fights, right? You getting a $50,000, lineup where you spend all your salary, you could actually come up with the right formula and split with less people than you're expecting.
Yeah, someone actually had asked that question about how much money to leave on DK and said, is 1,000 too much? And I said, look, you're going to separate yourself from the field. When I did my crunches, the most I left on the table was $700 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
By the way, Jason Sanchez, appreciate you in the super chat saying Baby Slice doesn't want that smoke from Pete the Heat.
I appreciate it. My trackpad died again, so I can't see the chat, but I will say that, I've been trying to get the fight with Baby Slice, and I appreciate everybody from Awesemo tweeting out and retweeting, trying to get me the fight against Baby Slice. If you don't know Kimbo Slice's son, that's the fight I want. That's the fight we want. But hey, what can you do, right? Hopefully when attendance comes back, maybe I'll get a phone call. We'll see.
We'll see what happens there. Jordan over in our Slack account says, who are the clear fades, Pete?
I don't want to say it, but I don't have too much exposure to Kevin Holland. I'm like really, really low on Kevin Holland because he's coming off of a full training camp just a couple weeks ago, a lackluster performance against Derek Brunson. I do think that Marvin Vettori is a stronger guy, has better striking, more volume than Derek Brunson at this point, at this stage of the game. Kevin Holland's a guy that I'm really not too fond of. Not really fond of Jim Miller. I understand where people could be, kind of banking on the legend to pull something out. Not really banking on that. I think that those are two. I think that Georges Dano is another guy that I'm like, yeah, it's a no thank you for me, Jason. I mean, like, those are three fighters that I don't want to say I crossed two of them off, but have minimal exposure to them.
On the betting side of the equation, if you wanted to play Jim Miller, I would play Jim Miller wins in round 1 plus 625.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's going to come out hot out the gate if he's his old self. And to this point, I mean, you kind of are what you are, and he'll come out like that and then have a significant drop off in cardio and then probably get finished within the fight. That's a prop bet that I actually really like. I like Joe Solecki inside the distance. I think that, Jim Miller's fought some tougher fighters than Joe Solecki, but at this stage of the game in today, I feel like Joe Solecki can take out the Jim Miller today.
Of course, this is UFC Live for Lock right here on Awesemo.com, and we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. They are a player prop-based contest. With Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge. Just head over to monkeyknifefight.com. And when you use that promo code Awesemo, you'll get an instant first match deposit up to $50. So sign up today. What I really love to do at Monkey Knife Fight, I do the more or less contests. More times than not, I'm looking at these significant strikes, try to find some edges in there. We talked about the strategy show with that Daniel Rodriguez, Mike Perry one, so be sure to check out that. Also, I did mention MMA ownership projections are free over at the site today. Also free are NBA player projections, MLB rankings, and NHL player projections. So be sure to check out everything we got today over at Awesemo.com. Joey says, who's the expensive guy and the cheap guy I should be starting my lineup with on DraftKings?
Well, the Arnold Allen Sadiq Youssef fight is kind of a fight, like it's an exciting matchup for me to watch. But as far as like DFS production, I feel like I'm going to, take a lower approach, ownership wise than like some of the field. I think that Arnold Allen is a value play to consider because of his grappling. But if you look historically in other matchups, he hasn't really performed that well for DFS. So that's kind of like a fighter that I wanted to roster, but not really, which is why I started off most of my lineups with a William Knight. A William Knight's kind of like a guy that I was really starting a lot of my rosters with. You already talked about, Joe Selecki, because of the salary savings. It's a 9K option that it's not an easy fight, but it's a very winnable fight at this stage of the day, stage of the game. That's kind of like where I started a lot of my lineups. But obviously, if neither one of those fighters come through, then you have to really start looking at that mid-range. And you have two fighters in the mid-range. Bahamondes, is a fighter that has all the potential in the world to take out John Makdessi. I mean, the stature alone, he's so tall, so long for the division. And Makdessi doesn't really perform that well against kickers. You think about what Lando Venata did, what Cowboy Cerrone did. I think that Bahamondes is kicking and his leg dexterity is next level. So I wouldn't be surprised if he catches him. But you're banking on a UFC debutant to come through, which is always tough.
Yeah, 7-inch reach advantage for him in that one. And Dan asked if Makdessi is a good pump play. I think Makdessi's kind of a fade guy for me. I don't think if I have him, I only have him in one or two lineups. He's just not someone that I'm looking at today.
If there wasn't such a size disadvantage for Makdessi, right? Like I would be kind of, pumping the Makdessi value play. And, I spoke about it and wrote about it in my article that initially when I saw Makdessi as an underdog, I'm like, okay, cool. Because, I know a lot of fighters, but it's more by face than name. And when I actually saw Bahamondes, I'm like, stylistically, this is a tough matchup for Makdessi, who likes to stay on the outside and pick his shots like a sniper, mostly by hands. And I think that he could get caught with some stuff. Very tough fighter, but, has the veteran advantage in this matchup.
Kilo asks, he says, at least 3 of Selecki, Knight, Vettori, and Shore as my DraftKings GPP core. Who do you guys have as your core, and who are you highest exposed fighters? I can tell you my highest exposed fighter is William Knight, and obviously that part of that is a salary play more than anything else. When I look at some of my other highest exposed, I have a decent amount of Sasha. Jorgen's a core play for me, and Selecki.
Yeah, it's Selecki. I mean, I sound like a broken record, but Selecki's a core play for me. Knight's a guy that I like. We didn't really have to worry. We had some fights fizzle out, but we don't really have to worry about that 8,000, 8,200 fight. And that's why William Knight's going to be very, very popular. Mackenzie Dern, I think, is a popular underdog, but like I said, can she really submit Nunes? If you're looking for a mid-range play, then Nunes might be able to stifle some takedowns. It's just she'll probably get around 80 or so points, which is it's always tough, but it's dependent on the slate and how the fights go. I mean, if we have tons of finishes, 80 points ain't going to do it. If we have a ton of decisions, then maybe 80, 85 points can actually find you the correct recipe to take down the tournament.
Here's a potential guy that maybe people are, I wouldn't say sleeping on, but because of everyone going the Mike Perry route, that maybe Daniel Rodriguez is a little bit of a slate breaker here today.
Yeah, he could be, right? Like he's been training a lot with Cowboy Cerrone and, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. They've been also at Syndicate, they're working a lot, making sure that they're getting prepared. With Daniel Rodriguez, he has that jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. We know that Mike Rodriguez is a brawler. He's going to welcome the brawl, but he will shoot a lot of takedowns, and maybe he'll leave his neck out there. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns in this matchup, but I do feel like Daniel Rodriguez's volume alone should speak volumes. I mean, for lack of a better word, I feel like Daniel Rodriguez throws at such a high clip and a high rate. If this stays on the feet, we could be looking at a striking match that could result in a strong score.
Arnold Allen or Mackenzie Dern? I would go Dern. I don't like the co-main event from a DFS. From a fight perspective, I love that fight.
Yeah.
But from a DFS perspective, I just feel like it's got the makings of a low score for the winner.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the Mackenzie Dern fight either for DFS, but in that situation, I'd probably say Dern, just because the jiu-jitsu is real.
Miles says top 3 fighters that live up to the price, and this is on DraftKings.
Well,
how do you not start with Vettori?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really.
And we talked about on the strategy show. If you're rostering Vettori at 9,600, you're looking for 120 points at least.
Yeah, I don't know if we're really talking about Vettori enough, because I think it's a good fight for him. It's just the price, right? Like, I couldn't find so many low 7K options that I absolutely loved, which is why, like, my lineups are a little weird this week. And I think that Vettori is going to be very, very important for a lot of lineups, especially if you're a safe player. Grappling advantage, volume advantage, just needs to avoid getting hit with a big shot. Kevin Holland will be dangerous for a couple rounds, but off of his back, I think Vettori could actually break the slate.
Here's a follow-up on that Allen and Jung question. Who scores higher in a win? It's a good one, because I mean, both of them could go 15 minutes.
Yep.
If it's on DraftKings, I might say Allen, FanDuel, Dern.
I think I just lean Dern, because I think her possibility for an early finish is more than, let's say, an Arnold Allen finish. I think that, she could pull off a miraculous armbar or take the back of Nina Nunes. I mean, let's be real. Mackenzie Dern looks like she's in phenomenal shape, and fighting a woman coming off of a pregnancy, you'd have to imagine that she's not going to be like 100% her old self. I feel like if she is, then man, she proved me wrong. But I feel like she might be just a slightly lesser version of herself.
It wasn't that long ago. A lot of people question about Mackenzie Dern and making weight. It wasn't that long ago. Who scores more, Jorgen De Castro or Gamrot?
Gosh. I'll say that the quick round 1 finish for Jorgen De Castro is extremely live. Like, he could go out there and get a TKO via leg kicks. He could put away, Dano pretty quickly within round 1. But the takedown city potential, the control time of Gamrot, Holtzman's ability to get back to his feet because he's a good wrestler himself, there should be more potential for Gamrot. But I think the safer play is De Castro for sure.
Top 3 fights to target other than the main event.
Other than the main event, well, I think the William Knight Da Un Jung fight, right? Like, we've talked a lot about William Knight, but Da Un Jung can easily knock out William Knight, right? Like, William Knight keeps his chin up, his head on the center line, his hands somewhat low. He's at a height disadvantage. If the grappling fails, he's not a bad striker by any means, but Da Un Jung is a powerhouse and could put him away. So, like, split your exposure with that fight. Another fight, Jason. Let me think. Besides the main event, might be that Mike Perry, Daniel Rodriguez fight, right? Like, that seems like a GPP central.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Samuel, appreciate you. In the super chat, he goes, who are the fighters no one is really talking about that should be in top consideration?
We mentioned Daniel Rodriguez could be a guy that maybe nobody's talking about. I will say that, man, Ignacio's pretty good. I think that he could have a breakout in this debut. Bahamondes is fantastic. It's just he's making his debut against a tough veteran. So can he come through? Yeah, he came through on the Contender Series, but I'd like to see him, after this fight. I want to see how he performs with an actual talented fighter facing off with him. Bahamondes is definitely a guy that I circled and I'm having exposure to because I kind of want to be early rather than late.
How about Sadiq Youssef potentially being that fighter that no one's talking about and ends up being optimal?
Yeah, Sadiq's good, right? I mean, the only criticism we have over Sadiq is how he was taken down against Andre Fili, right? I think that Sadiq Youssef possesses, incredible skills on the feet. He's not bad on the ground either. I mean, he's out of Lloyd Irvin, which is a strong camp. I just feel like, when I saw him get taken down, I almost wondered to myself, am I too high on Sadiq Youssef? And yes, he's young, so he's learning, but he does have some pretty impressive wins. And if he connects against Arnold Allen, we could look at a slate breaker. And what was my saying, Jason? I always said prioritize main event and co-main event fighters because those underdogs or those fighters in those situations are some of the most talented on the entire card. And, you could do worse than Sadiq Youssef.
Nick mentions Jordan Griffin is a decent underdog no one is talking about.
Yeah, and Jordan Griffin's a good underdog that nobody's talking about, fighting a guy making his UFC debut, looked decent on the Contender Series. It's just like Jordan Griffin, gets a lot of wins via submission. So does his opponent. He looks okay and he wins rounds in almost all of his fights. But it's kind of like he's got one good round in him and then he either takes off the other rounds or he gets reversed and put in some bad position. So it's a fighter to sprinkle in your lineups for sure. But I've kind of lost trust in Jordan Griffin, but he is fighting a UFC newcomer.
Yeah, just was kind of. Just going down my Twitter timeline to make sure we don't have any last minute changes. It does not appear to have any last minute changes. It's something you just got to kind of check, just to double check.
Yeah, I'm over here. I can't check nothing. So I'm banking on you. I will say, Jason, that I have it on my phone so I can see the questions now. We have 300 people in here checking us out. Thank you guys for waking up, having your coffee, having breakfast, whatever you're doing, kicking off your Saturday with UFC fights. It's pretty cool having you guys here. We appreciate your support. If you can just hit that like button, get us to 100 likes. We really appreciate it so we can keep coming back each week.
And, of course, be sure to rock that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile, and you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus when you place within the top 3 of any GPP of 5,000 plus entries. Just head over to awesemo.com/announcement/avatar, or just simply Google search Awesemo avatar for instructions on how to download that image. Always love seeing those screenshots after the fact of how everyone did here on their DFS lineups. Of course, if you have any questions here, a couple of questions coming in about Sasha potentially a play against Impa. We've talked about that a little bit here. I think in terms of a pump play, it's not a bad pump play. Look, Impa is an extremely talented fighter, trains at a great gym. My only concerns heading into this one is he looked drained at the weigh-ins, cutting down to 170 after coming off a knockout loss. I do have some concerns there.
Yeah, so let's talk about what rostering Sasha Palatnikov does for your lineups, right? He's so ridiculously cheap against a fighter coming off a knockout loss, against a fighter cutting down a tremendous amount of weight. If you're new to MMA, if you cut a tremendous amount of weight, you are more susceptible to take shots and get knocked out because you are dehydrated, you are depleted. So, maybe Sasha Palatnikov can take advantage of that. Also, when you're cutting an extreme amount of weight, that does zap your cardio over the duration of the fight. Yeah, maybe Impa Kasanganay comes out looking amazing, like a stud in round 1. But as the fight progresses, if he does not put away Sasha Palatnikov, we've seen Palatnikov, overcome adversity, and he has good volume. So rostering a guy that's so cheap like that will allow you that flexibility to roster some of these high-end fighters and have more high-end fighters than other people that are trying to develop balanced lineups.
Yeah. I know someone had asked about John Destiny coming off ACL surgery, which is the
Great
fact. That's
point.
something always to play into there. I want to go back to what you just mentioned there about roster construction. So let's say you put Sasha in your lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say you then start your lineup with him and Marvin Vettori. So on DraftKings, that now means you have an average remaining per player of 8,400. So let's just say you then throw in William Knight. So he's 7,800. Now you can spend 8,600 per player in your final 3 slots. So if you want to go with that core, it does really open some things up for you.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. Like, I'm not the biggest Sasha Platnikov guy, but the guy has some like advantages in this fight, and maybe he can take advantage of it. And he was a guy that was counted out, was hit with some big shots against Louis Kosei. He did fine. You know, there was a moment where Impa Kasanganay against Maki Pitolo was a back and forth striking affair. Maybe you don't even need, you probably do because there's 13 fights. But I was going to say, maybe you don't even need a win from Sasha Platnikov. You just need him to survive 15 minutes to maybe allow you that flexibility to get some of these 100-point performances.
Yeah, I mean, you talk, especially when we're talking about cash play, you put them in your cash line. That's going to help out here. Terry, I missed your question a little earlier, but I'll get to it right now. Gamrot or Selecki on FanDuel, who's going to stop or have takedowns?
Well, I don't know if Jim Miller's really going to shoot takedowns on Selecki. I mean, he could. He might. You know, Gamrot's going to be offensively looking for takedowns. Like, he's going to try to take, you know, Holtzman to takedown city. Selecki could maybe defend some takedowns, land some of his own, get in top position, and work towards a finish.
Next up, any thoughts on Mackenzie Dern on DraftKings?
I wish he was cheaper, Jason. I wish he was cheaper. If he was cheaper, I'd be okay with it.
To me, it's a 50-50 fight.
It is.
I mean, look, you brought this point earlier. You don't know if it's necessarily a great DFS play. Like, I do believe that if this is a fight that ends via stoppage, I do believe it'll be Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah, I would agree with that, right? Like, you talked about how in some of Mackenzie Dern's fights, she took advantage of her opponent's mistakes or their lack of judgment or their fight IQ in certain scenarios. You know, Hannah Cyphers, Reina Marcos. I mean, the list goes on and on. And it's a fighter that doesn't really have the best takedowns. Most jiu-jitsu fighters do not. But she has been working a lot on her judo, trying to hit some throws from the clinch. So maybe that's a way for her to get the takedown.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, with Mackenzie Dern, she's gonna throw countless amounts of overhand right hands. That's just what she does. I mean, and whether she can take advantage of that. Azure or Shore. I feel like this is really a fight that we haven't really talked a lot about.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously Azure's coming off of the win. Prior to that, he got that knockout loss against Brian Kelleher. And Jack Shore is a guy coming into the UFC that, you know, was a high level prospect that everyone was interested to see.
Yeah, I like Jack Shore. Now, I wrote about it in my article of how I always love to see, you know, fighters from different parts of the world collide because styles and backgrounds are so interesting. And, you know, sometimes, like, you know, if you think about like Dagestan fighters, their incredible wrestling is tough for even American wrestlers to deal with. And we're kind of lagging behind that. You know, in this matchup, I do want to see how Hunter Azure's American wrestling does against Jack Shore, because Shore's usually the guy that has the better takedowns, and, you know, his grappling is definitely better than Hunter Azure as far as like a jiu-jitsu perspective. But if Azure forces him to stand up and forces his fight to keep on the feet, or maybe puts him on his back, now we're talking about an underdog that can definitely come through. You know, let's just say Jack Shore is undefeated for a reason. He really is. I think he's so talented. I'm leaning Jack Shore, but we'll have exposure to his opponent.
Of course, looking at our ownership projections, which is free over at Awesemo.com, Jack Shore 34.5% on DK, third highest, only above him, Joe Slucky and Marvin Vettori, of course, along with MMA ownership projections, also free today at the site, NBA player projections, MLB rankings, and NHL player projections. Of course, we got a ton of content here on YouTube all day long, so be sure to subscribe to the channel, see what we do have to offer here. And hey, you know what? If you find out after a couple days you don't like it, it's easy. You can always just unsubscribe. So subscribe to the channel and be sure to hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. Of course, coming up here at noon Eastern time will be MLB Live Before Lock. Jack Shore or Ignacio on DraftKings?
Well, if you're box score watching, right, obviously you're going to pick Jack Shore because he's priced fairly and he's really broken slates in the past. But, I will say that Ignacio Bahamondes is somebody that can have that sneaky KO, maybe he catches McDessie with a head kick early. McDessie is coming off of ACL surgery, which I think he's trying to come back a little too quickly, trying to pull a Dominic Cruz. And against a kicker like Bahamondes, if Bahamondes buries some leg kicks, like, trust me, if I'm fighting a guy coming off an ACL, surgery, first thing I'm doing is testing that leg. And especially if you're a strong kicker, you could be looking at, getting a finish over McDessie.
Perry or Dern, last spot in DraftKings.
Yeah, I don't like this, but I guess I'd have to say Mike Perry, right? Like, I'm expecting him to lose, but I feel like just the Dern against Nunes fight, like, Nunes has decent takedown defense. Dern struggles to get the fight there. At least Mike Perry is now taking his fight seriously. He has survived in fights against Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's tough. He has power. We have seen Daniel Rodriguez hurt. So for me, it's Mike Perry, but it's not a pick that I feel confident in.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. Of course, if you do have any last-minute questions, we're going to be here for 5 more minutes as lock is 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Of course, main card today at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And seeing some questions or comments about Impa. And the first fight of the night, if you look over past couple of cards, it seems like that has been a fight that we've had to target. I don't like rostering the first fight of the night. I just don't.
Yeah,
and probably because I literally have not much Impa and more Sasha, means Impa's probably going to win.
Right. First fight of the night seems like it's optimal more times than not. It's just the most tilting fight to target, right? Like, because maybe your exposure's opposite of how it should be, but you have to look at the positives at least. Like, say, if you're 40% on a fighter, at least you do have 40% lineups with that fighter in there that could be optimal. So, I think main event, co-main event are important. First fight of the night is starting to join that list, Jason.
We mentioned on Thursday on the strategy show that over the last couple of cards, we're starting to see more favorites coming in. There was a stretch where underdogs were about 40%. All right, the number's 3.5 underdogs to win today. Over, under.
I'm going to say over. Hey, that's a good line. I'm saying over.
All right, so we've got 13 fights, 6.5 end and finish.
Damn. I'm going to say under.
Even Tyler. I see Tyler's even agreeing with you behind the scenes here.
I can't see Tyler because my trackpad, but, Tyler, good job.
I mean, come on, man. That is Apple mistake 101, making sure your stuff isn't charged.
No, you know what it is, Jason? Is I got all these chargers that are now broken. I have to get new chargers because I can't even use my key. I can't use nothing. But I'm here. I'm live with you guys, so that's good. 3 minutes until lock, Jason. Hopefully you guys have your lineups in, your exposure set. I'm excited.
Yeah, I got my lineups done about an hour ago, so it's always nice to kind of have that done. You're just hoping that there's no late minute changes, which sometimes do happen in this sport.
Yeah, I know we've had our share of them for sure. Me personally, I like daytime fights on Saturday. It's cool. I like it a lot. I enjoy it. And
we can do this every week.
I'm cool with it. I'm totally fine with it.
I am all about some afternoon MMA. I'm with you on that one. By the way, guess what I'm doing tonight?
Wait, what are you doing?
Got the text a little while ago. I'm going to WrestleMania.
Get out of here, are you?
Yeah.
Nice.
So
I used to be the biggest wrestling fan as a kid. Oh my God, I used to be the biggest wrestling fan. Like I guess that's kind of what you want to say, like got me into combat. Like, I mean, I was always doing karate and kickboxing, but like messing around and, hitting people with the Stone Cold Stunner or the Rock Bottom, like that was the best.
Yeah, I really haven't followed it over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
When I was working at terrestrial radio, the guys would come into the studio all the time because, a lot of them live here in Tampa. So, but yeah, buddy's like, hey, you want to go to WrestleMania night? Sure.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
We'll see. I'm sure I'll put some stuff up there on Instagram tonight.
Yeah, definitely do, man. That's cool.
Looking forward to the fights, of course. So we do have fights next week as well. Is the Gaslam Whitaker card in Vegas. I know I got the press release yesterday from the UFC about that. So looking forward to that. Joey says when they move WrestleMania Saturday, it's because they're doing 2 nights of it.
Dude, that
25,000 a night. 25.
They make so much money. They make so much money in that industry. It's so crazy.
Oh, I know. It's interesting, but I'm looking forward to watching the fights. We're actually just now 1 minute until we're going to hit lock. Good luck to everyone today. I will tell you, just non-DFS, I'm really interested in that co-main event. I think it's a really high-level fight there. I would say the other fights that I'm extremely interested to see, I'm more interested about certain fighters. I'm interested to see what does Joe Selecki look like against a veteran in Jim Miller. And then I would say the other one that is Gamrot. Second fight in the UFC is probably the other guy that I'm really looking at in terms of how well do they do.
Yeah, same. I'm really looking forward to those fights. Hopefully Gamrot doesn't go 0-2.
Yeah, of course, keep it locked here to Awesemo.com all day. Of course, coming up here in 30 minutes from now will be MLB Live before lock. Then we got the NHL Strategy Show, then the NBA shows. Of course, thanks to our sponsor, Monkey Knife Fight. Head to monkeyknifefight.com to make your player prop-based contest. Of course, be sure to sign up with the promo code Awesemo. You get an instant first match deposit up to $50. So that's going to do it for UFC Live for Luck. Good luck to everyone, and we will talk to you next Thursday for the Strategy Show.